Radio for Readers, Bookmark.
Up next, the story of life, death, and passages, plus one's fate. Her reflection on the next Bookmark.
Bookmark.
Pamela Grace is visiting us from Alberta, Canada. Her book, Her Reflection, is a story of life and death and a connection to God. She joins us in the Bookmark program. Pamela, thanks for making that long journey.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you for having me here in Florida.
Okay. You grew up in Canada, but I think every reader, every person who buys this book is going to want to know, they know about your career in mental health. What prompted you to write this?
I think listening to someone blame, you see someone doing something and then all of a sudden they have to pay the consequences for it. Well, it's never their fault. So it's people blaming someone else consistently for their own choices in life. And I thought, you know, how would God deal with that? Like what? So I started writing it.
This story is a person who had a drug history. She is very ill. And at the end, the reader really doesn't know her age. Is she 22? Is she 89? Are there hints in the book that will bring you to the conclusion of whether she's 22 or 89?
I think you might not notice, yes, there's a lot in there, and you're not going to notice it until you get basically to the last chapter. So hopefully.
She marries a man of God. How does it change her life?
I think she has someone else to lean on, someone to help guide her through the decisions and choices that she makes during life, bearing children, and just general life.
The central character's name is Kelly, and she was praying for someone. I think there was a time that her friends were taunting her, suggesting she would never find a boyfriend, a man, to go through this life with. And then all of a sudden he shows up and asks her to marry her. How long had they known each other?
That was Cindy, Kelly's friend. Kelly was, because she was so in love with the bad boy of the school and his looks, she asked, or she basically told Cindy that because Cindy was waiting for true love, oh, you're never going to get married, and yeah, so there was a bit of high school taunting back and forth, and then she finally did find someone later on.
I'm curious because there's so much detail about illness, treatment, connection to God, reflection. There's this consistent theme of reflection, an imaginary reflection through this. How much of this is you or people that you've known in your life?
I've worked for many years in the healthcare field, in the hospital, so I've seen and sat next to people that are dying, doing all the monitoring of that process. And sometimes I've thought, like, what's going through their mind? You know, are there regrets? Do they want, sometimes they have family, they don't have family. And so I think putting Kelly in that position in the hospital, not having family, and you know, she did the only thing that she could because we communicate a lot. We need other people around us. So not having that, she leaned on her reflection in a mirror, our window.
There is a storyline in here, later in the book, in which she is attending the funeral of her husband.
Yes.
Which, that caught me totally by surprise because through so much of this, through the beginning of the book, we're going back and forth between her treatments for her illness, to her, what the reflection imagination is speaking back to her, and then suddenly we're thrust into a funeral of the man she loved. Is that a dream or is that the real thing that's happening at that time?
Well, I don't want to tell anyone what her age is at the end. They have to figure that out at the end. But in the reflection story, yes, I mean, everybody, because she aged, and you're going to go through loss of loved ones and stuff. So
this book, to me, lends itself to have a future book. Have you thought about writing another chapter with taking any of these characters and expanding and creating their own books?
No, not at this point. I think there's such a profound impact on Kelly herself and how I left it off that I really want people to not see Kelly. At the end of the book, what I want you to see is yourself. I want you to see the choices that you've made, and I say you in general. Anyone that decides to read it, I want them to see themselves at the end of the book, and ponder that, not the character.
How long did it take you to write Her Reflection?
About A month.
Really?
Yeah. Now,
I mean,
ask
it's
me how
so
long.
jammed. Really, a month?
Yeah. Now, editing.
Right, but I mean, to get the heart of this story. So were you working like every day on this? All day, every day?
When I start writing, it's about 12 to 14 hours a day that I'll put into writing.
Do you ever get writer's block?
No, I purposefully put a book aside because there's other things, and then I won't touch it, because if I can't sit down and concentrate on it, then I don't do this dabbling back and forth. It's like, no, yeah.
You have a mental health care background, and you worked with people for years. How did you get into that? Did you come from a family of healthcare providers? What thrust you into that line of work?
No, I started my career life as basically a bookkeeper or accountant, and I didn't like the isolation. I didn't like sitting at a desk, and I love people. So, and I love kids, so I trained to take care of special needs children. And once I got my certificate in that, then I ended up having to work in a home with adults. And then I went to locked Alzheimer's units and kind of expanded from there.
When we approached you to do this book on BookMarc, one of the things that spoke to me was the connection to faith, the passages from the Bible, Deuteronomy, and right through this. There are several instances when you stop and you reflect the Bible. What's been the reaction from the faith-based community?
I think because the verses that I have in there, it's really hard-hitting. It's like, do you believe in God, or do you just want to go to church? And I don't mean to say that, maybe, whatever.
Well, there's pretend church. Many people,
yes,
I think that's what
yes.
you're alluding to, where people go through the motions, but they're in fact not living their faith.
And we all get to that crossroad where, you know, generally people die. So we're all going to face the reality of who God is at one point in our life.
It was staggering to see how true to life the description of this end-of-life experience is for the main character. And as the people connect with her, and you know, her inability to move, her inability to communicate. I mean, right down to when she has an accident in the room and she's being helped with the gloves and the changing of her garments and the washing. That's real. That really happens. Did you experience that in your work?
All the time. All the time. Yeah, you're definitely caring for people, and you have to realize these people had dignity, they had control over their lives, and now all of a sudden they're in a position where they can't even go to the bathroom. And I mean, you can have very important people that have led amazing lives, and everybody, well, not everybody, but generally a lot of people get to that position where they can't do anything for themselves.
What's the mindset like when you're doing that? Is it a case where you put everything in your life aside because your immediate focus is caring for that person, so you're not thinking about yourself at all?
No, I love trying to care for them in the manner that says, you know what, you don't have anything to be concerned about. You know, I do this all the time. Like, so I try to make them comfortable, you know, and put them at peace, and really erase any type of embarrassment that they could go through.
Pamela, what was the reaction from the faith-based community when the book first came out?
Generally, they really want me to push it. It's like, you know what, people need to hear and see what this woman goes through, what the story. It's like a longer, elongated parable. Right.
What I liked is I thought this would be perfect in any religious store, religious article store, Christian bookstore. I don't know what it's like in Canada, but there are an increasing number of them popping up in the United States. In addition to the ability to buy the book on Amazon and other places, we have more Christian bookstores, I think, than we've ever had. Now, there are some national chains. What's it like in Canada?
I think there's a growing desire for more faith-based products. For example, movies are getting bigger, and yeah, I think that this genre is actually growing quite well right now.
Were you approached to do a screenplay on this? Has anyone talked to you about making a motion picture about this?
No, but I really think they should.
I do too. I mean, I can think of several famous people that could play the lead characters here. What do we know about her father? What will readers learn about Kelly's father?
I really left him vague because there's so much stigma around parents that, like, okay, for example, if there's a daughter or son going wayward, well, it's the parent's fault. So I left him vacant, saying that, you know what, all he did was the best he could, and I didn't really want to give too many details on how he raised her and why she chose to do that. the point being, she chose to do what she did on her own, based only on her own thoughts.
I was trying to think about what Kelly's reaction was to her friend who was, I thought, cruel to her at some point. I don't know whether she was trying to shake her up and say, hey, open your heart, open your mind to a man who will approach you. She was pretty mean to her. How is it that Kelly stood by her? Was it because she knew it was for her greater good? What was going on there?
Well, I think at that age, like, I mean, I had my best friend, I still talk to her in high school. I mean, we got mad at each other, you know, and we did everything to each other and for each other. And to this day, like, we've gone through a lot of different things, children and so on, and lives, and you do that. Best friends have the availability to, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that when people finish this book, and it's an easy read from the standpoint, it's not a very big book, but it's an intense book.
You can't chapter flip on that book.
You cannot. And I believe in reading the reviews of other people. Many people read it on an airplane, on a long flight, and you've got to pay attention because you could easily get lost because you go between the reality and the imagination so often. If you try to skip,
you can't.
You cannot, and you cannot jump to the end. Now, how is the book available? It's available through Amazon?
Right now, it's through my publisher, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, Art.ca for Amazon. Because it's relatively new, I think Ingram picked it up too. And now I don't know exactly where Ingram sends it to. I just know that they bought it.
Okay.
But for other people to buy it, it's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, I would say right now.
Let's give them your website as well, which is?
It's being worked on right now.
Oh, it's being worked on. Okay. So right now they would go to Amazon. Do you plan to put this to audio?
Yes. Yes, I do. And the company that I've spoken with, we're kind of hashing out some details right now. Wordprint, our account, will be based out of California. So.
And this is not your first book?
No.
Tell us about the first book. Can you tell us a little about it?
The first book is basically why I started writing. It was a memoir. I was really bored. I went from being extremely busy to living on a farm where I dealt with animals for 2-4 hours in the morning, nothing, and then animals again for 2-4 hours. So during the day, and I'm not a good sitting person, and so I sat down at the computer and I started writing. So, and one of my books called Born Again was basically inspired something similar to her reflection. And I was looking, you know, at this person that was talking to me, and they were just so into themselves they couldn't see another human being. Like nothing existed outside of that 2-foot frame. And that inspired me with that book. And again, I said, you know, God, what would you do? How would you change someone like this? And so that's it. Basically, predominantly a characteristic and making a story around a transformation.
Pamela,
does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Two things. Were you always drawn to your faith, or was there a moment in your life that you were brought to your faith?
I think a moment when I became pregnant years and years and years ago. And it put so much fear in me at the thought of having to raise a little person. How am I going to do this? How am I going to instill morals? Well, I guess I need to figure it out first before I can teach someone else. And so I think just the fear of being responsible for another human being brought me to God and asked Him to help me with this.
And how does a prolific writer like you end up on a farm with animals? Were you always a farm girl? Did you grow up on a farm?
No.
Do you love animals?
I love animals. I started raising sheep. Incredible experience. Our farm's actually for sale.
Okay.
So
it's a tough life, isn't it?
You don't have a day off. You don't have a day off. There's always a problem. There's always something, you know, you're out to fix it. I put a new roof on a barn. I fixed fences. I mean, I can do anything now. So
good for you.
It's trained me.
And finding time to write.
Yeah. There is still pockets there. And I'm actually working on another one now, too. So.
Is this available on Kindle as well?
Yeah, Kindle, Nook, yeah.
It's called Her Reflection. I can't wait for the audio to come out, particularly if the people who do the audio do the people as characters.
Yes.
Because I find those so compelling. Thank you for writing this. Thank you for making this incredible journey from Alberta to come to be with us here in studio on BookMarc. It's such an honor to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pamela Grace, our guest today. The book is called Her Reflection, and it is out now. You can get it at Amazon.com. That's our broadcast for today. Thanks so much for watching.